Greetings. My most respect and love for each and every one of you at any place that you are in life, at any location, and with whatever that you're doing. A lot of love and affection is coming from me towards you. And I'm hoping that in this short time that we spend together, we can take a new step towards our fulfillment, towards being a better person, towards being a more complete or more evolved person. And evolution is behind us. We have evolved from a cell in the bottom of the oceans to the magnificent beings that we are, with all the power that we have in creating a lot of comfort, beauty, amenities for everyone in the world. Well, I'm Dr. Daniel Sadiq. I'm a clinical psychologist, licensed marriage and family therapist in Los Angeles, and the clinical director at the Wheel of Wellbeing, which is a center for mindfulness, understanding ourselves, loving ourselves, moving forward in life with the most power that's within us. And connecting to this power has been the message that we're bringing to you every time that we connect. I know that each one of us has the same desire to evolve, to get higher and ascend into a part of ourselves that probably is still not tapped into. When we started, this place that we came from was not that sophisticated, was not entailing so much knowledge through the experiences, understandings, learnings. Today we are in a place that problems are easier to be solved than the past, than the historical times that we are reading about. Today, history is being made in the way that we're dealing with the coronavirus and how it's affecting us, and how the principles of life still apply to the same problem in the same way. And the topic that this social isolation has brought up is creating boundaries. Boundaries is an issue that is a little bit complicated because somehow we feel that if we set boundaries, it's wrong. We are being punitive to other people if by saying no, we are denying somebody else, or we have been raised in a way that we would like to sacrifice ourselves. We would like to give more to get approval, to get understanding, to get compassion, to get whatever that we need. So there is a give and take in boundaries that is often not clear enough, especially in some cultures. I come from a Persian background, and in this culture, actually, the boundaries, the way that in the Western world we are looking at them, it's shone upon. It's not something that is necessarily approved, because within these cultures, which are tribal cultures, which are cultures that people have been together, merged with each other, enmeshed in thousands of years, it is a virtue to be together, to have each other. So even when we talk about togetherness, that's a beautiful thing. But then the degree of togetherness is something that's not clear. How much of myself I can give up to satisfy you, or how much you're giving towards our relationship, these are negotiable, and we need to have a protocol. We need to have an understanding of where we are in this subject. So before we start the subject, I want to remind you the breathing, okay? Because to set your boundaries, you got to be relaxed. You cannot be anxious. You cannot be in your worries. You cannot be upset or in turmoil. So you want to bring yourself to a certain stance most of the time when you can, and that's through your breathing. Every time we speak, I'm going to remind you, because I'm hoping that through this breathing, you anchor yourself even better. And again, this unfortunate situation of the virus affects our lungs the most. So let's practice our breathing from your nose into your belly and out from your mouth. Let's do a few of them before we start talking about boundaries. Take a deep breath from your nose into your belly and let it out from your mouth. In and out. And notice how by doing this, you are sending yourself a message that I'm okay, that I'm comfortable, that I can breathe, that I'm alive. And being alive requires a certain protocol of practicing this livelihood in a way that is effectively, manageably relates with other people. We're not by ourselves in this world. I have you to be responsible to. You have family members, supervisors, friends, and the society to be responsible towards. These responsibilities require boundaries. Boundary means where I finish and where you start. So there is a distance between us. Well, in intimate relationships, that distance is less because two people have decided to live together, to have a commitment towards each other, to be closer with each other, and these boundaries becomes different, becomes more closer. However, in families, again, with certain cultures, particularly where we're raised, that connection, that togetherness becomes entangled, becomes an enmeshment. It's hard to separate them. It's hard to tell them apart. So when you deal with one member of a family, the other members are all activated, which is again, from the empathic point of view, from the feeling point of view, yes, that's a great thing that we have empathy towards each other and we have love. But then what happens to self love? Okay. If I don't love myself enough, if I don't care about myself enough, if I don't have enough confidence, if my self esteem is low, how is that going to affect my boundaries? Well, unfortunately, the effect of that in our boundaries is not seeing what's appropriate or at this time needed for us. We may consider the needs of others ahead of ourselves. Well, codependence is one kind of a relationship that those boundaries are not existent. And I'm sure you've all heard of the codependence personalities. That's a person that is relating to somebody else for having their needs met. You may say that we all have needs, and these needs are, some of them are natural. I mean, we are in a relationship because we want to fulfill some of these needs. The answer is, although we have certain needs, but first we're responsible to take care of our own needs before we can ask somebody else to support us. And even when we ask somebody to support us, it requires to have a certain understanding, allowance, permission, agreement that this is okay for them also to give it to us, to have this shared with us. Unfortunately, sometimes we're not understanding this. We're ignorant of the fact that, maybe what we need, what we expect is a burden on somebody else. And how is this burden going to affect our relationship? Well, let's say if you're in a marriage and then you require your spouse to prepare food for you every day. So this could be understood as a part of the agreement, but if the agreement is forced on the other partner and this person is supposed to, you expect them to do this, then there is going to be a problem because now this expectation may be not addressed, maybe not talked about. It creates a feeling of resentment, anger, separation, and retaliation, which now the reactions come in a different way by your spouse or your partner not doing other things for you. So if I do this for you, then I don't need to do this. And then that's not discussed and that's not negotiated. So you can see that how something very simple that is probably seen as okay and just normal even, it's creating a problem that's much deeper, and now this goes on into different levels of our relationship, and the relationship is going to be suffering as a result of the miscommunication, misunderstanding about our boundaries. So boundaries are a requirement for healthy relationships. Without having appropriate boundaries, we cannot have a fulfilling life. And these boundaries are seen in a lot of different places. If we talk about the 8 spokes of the wheel, which in Balancing the Wheel, the book that I wrote about how to have a healthy, happy, and successful life, we talk about 8 different parts of us that requires to practice these boundaries. And these boundaries are first physical. We need to be physically aware of our boundaries. I cannot step into somebody's space without their permission or without negotiating. I need to be informative of my willingness to go into somebody's space, to be in touch with that person. So we cannot just intrude upon someone. So that physicality, or the part that could be violated, creates physical abuse, creates some physical punishment for somebody else if it's not adhered to. So boundary in that physical sense of it is really important and requires understanding and negotiation. My body and your body are 2 separate bodies, and if we're going to be close with each other, if we're going to have any physical interaction, even eating together, again, part of this social isolation is our physical boundaries. Physically, we need to be 6 feet apart, or physically, I need to be restrained in my living room and talk to you from there. Okay, so these restrictions, these physical restrictions, are a part of our boundaries. Then we get into our mental boundaries. Mental boundaries is how my thoughts, how the way that I perceive things, how the way that I process things is going to affect yours. Okay, so if I'm forceful with my ideologies, if I want to push my thoughts and my beliefs into yours, and now you are not willing to participate, and I keep on enforcing it, then imagine what's going to happen. Again, resentment, resistance. You're not going to be willingly in connection with me as much. So we need that allowance and permission before we can even discuss ideologies, before we can share our thoughts or our understandings with each other. Because again, what I understand and I believe may be totally against what you believe or understand. And then that's going to create more distance and not closeness. The third one that is mostly the subject of my conversations with all of my clients, and a big part of this conversation with you today, is about our emotional boundaries. And that is a little bit more complicated because many times we are not aware of our feelings. And feelings are the place of being at the present moment, where we are now. In our last program, we talked about being present and how this presence, or being in the now, is important in everything that we do. So emotionally, if we are not aware of where we are, if we don't know what feelings are inside us and it's going on, how can we respond appropriately in a way that we can resolve this situation? So we require a certain understanding of our feelings, and if that is difficult for you, there is help. This is what I do to support my clients. A lot of times those feelings have gone for years and years without paying much attention. There are no words for it. They're not really much of a communication about our feelings. And then they've been suppressed inside of us. They've been pushed down, and we're sitting on a lot of feelings that creates certain physical discomfort. And this physical discomfort and all of these stuck feelings together creates our emotion. And these emotions could be reactions, the way that we show to our partners, our co-workers, people in society. So those are the pressures that builds inside of us because lack of those boundaries of emotional understanding. In other words, if I'm emotionally aware of where I am and I have empathy for you, that is where we can connect with each other without judging each other, without going over each other's emotions and feelings, saying they are right or wrong, addressing them in a way that you may not feel good actually by sharing your feelings. So it's really important how we can separate ourselves and our feelings from somebody else's feelings and do not merge them with each other, because together they can become explosive. Okay. The next part of these boundaries in relationships is really, as we were just saying, is so important, because now we have, in an intimate relationship, we have two people, or in a family relationship, we have a few different people who are close with each other, who are affected by each other's way of living. And then what happens in this format, in this close proximity? We require to pay attention to our limitations. So we got to know what my limits are. How much allowance do I have to even say something? If I want to criticize my sibling or my spouse, what right do I have to go and say what I need to say if I know that this may be hurtful, if I know that this other person may not even be where they can discuss this with us or listen to us? So that's a tight situation, because many times, without being aware of this other person's emotions, we, in a relationship, we may step too far into the other person's territory and create some sort of a upsetness, misunderstanding, anger, which in turn it's going to be a reaction towards us. And then now we have to defend ourselves. And then for this difference that we have, we just fall apart and we're not building something. Or the opposite. Sometimes in this relationship, one becomes the provider and one becomes the one that is needing to be taken care of. And regretfully, most of the time these people find each other. The needy one finds the one that's stronger and wants to support and sacrifice. But then this can only go so far, because the needy person becomes more needy, and the stronger person, or the provider, becomes even more resentful for being such a source, and eventually being upset about the demands or the expectations that are upon them. So even in that kind of a relationship, that it seems from the beginning it's a loving relationship, that, yes, I'm giving and then the other one is receiving, after a while this love is going to turn into hate, because I become more needy and the other person becomes stronger, and our distance becomes more. And again, we need to seek support if that is the nature of our relationship, because our relationships are really important. We want to be comfortable in a relationship. We want to feel good in a relationship. We want to be equal from feelings in relationship. Okay, so, and that's our relational boundaries. And then how these people play with each other in the way that, even if these boundaries are held dearly and correctly and appropriately, how at sometimes we allow ourselves to break some of these boundaries a little bit, be a little bit more playful. But that requires sets of rules. You cannot play a game without having rules and regulation in this game. So even if you want to be playful, this playfulness has a certain limit. You cannot just play basketball without adhering to the appropriate sets of rules in the game, or any game, any sports that you want to talk about. Even playing chess or backgammon is the same thing. So there are certain rules and regulations even when we're playful and we're having fun. We cannot indulge, we cannot break these boundaries of, again, physical, mental, emotional, and relationships in the format of playing and being together in a fun way. So let's be considerate of our boundaries even when we're having fun. How much of something is enough? How much of it is too much? Let's say drinking. Again, in this time of social isolation, I hear from a lot of people that their usage of alcohol is higher, or they smoke more weed, or they just a little bit more indulgent. It's understandable. Yes, it's a tight space and there are a lot of emotional upsetness, but these boundaries are with ourselves. How can I limit myself to not get into a habit of drinking or smoking every day, or just being indulgent by eating so much and just, not having other things to do. So now we go back to the subject of balance, which in balancing the wheel, we speak a lot about it through all of these aspects. Well, the next level of it is the boundaries in our environment. I mean, if you live by yourself or if you live with anyone else, there are certain rules and regulations about your habitat that you want to adhere to. So the cleanliness of your place, the light in your place, the hygiene in your place, and if you're living with other people, how this environment is shared, how we are responsible to adhere to certain agreements of keeping this unit in a way that is functioning appropriately. So let's say if, me and my spouse are living in this household, we got to understand that each one of us have a certain responsibility toward this environment. So each one of us shares parts of this responsibility and taking care of our unit together. Now take this and go above and beyond that. We are out of our home and now we are in the workplace. What are those rules and regulations in this environment? How much of space I require in my office, in my cubicle, and then how much my noise or other people's noise is bothering me. There's a lot that's happening in that environmental boundaries, and we are required to understand what those boundaries are. And sometimes they're not what we want. So then we need to understand that there is possibility for negotiation, for small changes, for creating something a little bit more beautiful that entices that environment. Very small thing, like just a flower, it can enhance your environment. Something that is aesthetically or a fragrance or a certain light, anything that can create more comfort in your environment, it's something that you want to pay attention to. However, now you cannot do this if the other person or other people around you are disturbed by your amenities or your comfort level. So that's when we need to consider other people's situation in setting this environmental boundary as well. And as we're moving on in this elevation of the 8 different levels of our understanding of ourselves, we get into our spiritual boundaries, and in that is the connection that we've been discussing, how connected we can be in a certain, energetic way. And then that's very private and personal. Nobody can force anybody to be connected or disconnected. This is an internal choice. This is my limitless boundary if I want to connect to a source which is empowering, or how much limitation I would like to apply to make my life accordingly. So when we get into religion or religiosity, those boundaries becoming very important, because no matter how I believe, what my religious beliefs are, it is mine, and I need to be cognizant and aware of those values and see how much of them I want to use. And if I want to bring it to you and sell it to you or give it to you or force you, then we're going to have a problem, because now your spirituality may be totally different than mine, and that will create major issues, because now we're talking about being different as human beings, which we're not. We are all connected within the same source. However, each one of us is connected in a different way, based upon our own wiring, based upon our own nervous system, our own processor, our own feelings and conditions and experiences. So you see, although we're connected to the same source, each one of us is connected differently, and we need to respect each other for that reason. Okay? It's not a right or wrong. It is what you believe, is your belief. Now, if you like to change it, if you find a better belief, if you want to find a better connection, you're more than welcome to decide to change it for yourself. You can have information, you can listen, you can read, you can understand. However, at the end of this, you want to make sure that you make your connection by yourself the way that you enjoy to make it, and without other people telling you what you need to do. Which leads us to the highest part of our connection and the boundaries that we need. And we call those the financial or the value system. Okay. The same way that your bank account is protected by your account number and by your own codes or passwords that you have, your values are in the same way yours. And your values are what are important and what creates your assets. And your assets are the production of all your efforts, of all your actions, of everything that you do. Okay. Now that becomes a vast part of our lives. We are consistently working, producing, connecting, building, creating. Where do we keep these values? How much is mine? How much is my partner's? How much is my neighbor's? How much is my co-workers? So these values are being shared, okay? In the same concept that financially, although we have enough money, we still are trying to make more money. At the same time, there are certain boundaries in giving also some money and being more cognizant of what other people's situations are and how these values can be shared with others as well. How we can be resources for the whole community to thrive and get better. So we bring from ourselves what we can, what we possess, what we have accomplished, and we share them together in a way that is productive and proactive without creating any guilt or shame for the other person, but by being generous and allowing other people to be a part of our lives. Which, in that sense, we are more valuable and we can create more values. If we share information together, I know a lot of my friends are sharing what they learn about the COVID-19 or the ways that we can care for ourselves or many different ways that they share information. To me, that's their generosity and their goodwill that they're giving from the wealth of their knowledge, understanding, love, care. And in this sharing capacity, also we need to have boundaries. So if I believe this sharing is going to be too much and you don't want to receive it, then I have to understand how much of this I want to give and how much of this you're willing to receive. And again, all of those are negotiable. And we can always discuss our needs and what is enough and what is not. So you can see that in all of these elements or the 8 areas that we spoke about, boundaries, there is always a level of communication. And this communication is required to focus on. We take a short music break. I want you to take a couple of minutes of rest and enjoy the music and refresh your breath in from your nose, out from your mouth. And as we are transferring to this music, maybe you can give yourself a moment of consideration to what's going on for you and relax your mind. It may take us a few more seconds as our engineers are preparing the music, or maybe not. Well, I guess we're not getting the music, and I'm going to continue on our conversation. You understand? I'm working from the corner of my living room and limitations are there. And although I would like to bring you a more soothing and comfortable situation, again, my boundaries, my limitations, the way that I'm sitting here is not going to allow me to be fully engaged the way I would like to be with you. So now that you're a little bit more relaxed and you took a break, let's discuss what are the areas that we can focus on in order to have our boundaries set. How do we set appropriate boundaries? This is the main message of today's conversation. First, you got to know your limits. If you don't know your limits and you don't know where you start and where you end, what are your requirements? What is important to you? How things are in perception for you, and what is it that you're hoping to gain? You need to be clear. And if you're not clear, I invite you to write down for yourself, okay, what is it that you want from your life? What is your purpose? What is your intention? Without having a purpose and intention, your boundaries are going to be blurry. They're going to be dark. You're not going to see behind the barriers. Okay. So knowing your limitations, where the walls are, how much you can push against it, how much you can negotiate to get beyond this barrier or wall, it is your first step. And then we talked about feelings. We've been talking about them and we will still be talking about them pretty much every time that we talk. Feelings are important. Feeling is your location. Feeling is where you are at this given moment. Just notice what you feel now. Do you feel interested? Do you feel excited? Do you feel bored? Do you feel questioning? There are certain feelings that are going on inside of you. So recognizing those feelings will give you the next step. From where you are, then you can process the information where you want to go, and then you can approach that accordingly, and you can take the next step. And then once you know your feelings, then you want to be able to communicate these feelings. So boundaries require communication. You want to learn about communication. And communication is kind of not easy. Why? Because we all have learned a certain language, not just in the sense of the dialogue, in the sense of understanding each other from the patterns of our family or social backgrounds. So the communication that we've learned from our parents, from our siblings, from our schools, from our, caregivers is different than the communication that we are required to have to negotiate our boundaries. It has a more sophisticated language, and then there is help always. If you want to learn that communication, I really invite you to join us and the Wheel Select, which is a community for those who want to learn more about themselves, about communication, about how to evolve as a person. I invite you to go to the website of wheelofwellbeing.com. If you like to take the test, which is a test on balance about those 8 areas that we spoke about, our relationship with boundaries, and figure out how things are going. You can figure out based upon your position what are your needs and how you can apply more communication or more other skills to it. And these skills are there for you once you become the member of the Select community, the Wheel Select community, which gives you unlimited number of programs, videos, conversations, access, and hopefully we can be more in touch and I can share through our understanding and our applications more of what helps us evolve as a person, as a family, and as a community. So I invite you to meet me on the community part of the Wheel Select, and there we can be discussing consistently any questions that you may have, any considerations that you have. As a member of the Wheel Select, you'll have full access consistently through our community channel to me and my lovely wife, Coach Bonnie, who is the co-founder of the Wheel of Wellbeing, and together we're providing, promoting, advocating well-being as a mission of our lives. So the other part that we want to discuss is awareness. Awareness is used very generally in many different ways, but awareness in reality is getting out of yourself and being able to look at yourself and your life and everything around you from a distance, from a place that you are not connected exactly to your position right now. It's an external look at yourself and where you are and how your life is going and what your decisions are and how you can take the next step. So this awareness is like an omnipresence to who you are, where you are, who's around you, what's going on. And to have that kind of awareness, we need to be able to understand the different concepts of our life in a way that we are clearly seeing the shortcomings, the strengths, the ups, the downs, and from there we can go inside again and make the necessary adjustments and take steps. Well, so the awareness becomes really important. One thing that you would like to know is that there is always support and you can always ask for support. And as I offered, you're more than welcome to be in touch with myself, Dr. Daniel Sadiq. I'm on Facebook also as Dr. Daniel Sadiq, and my lovely wife and partner, Coach Bonnie. Both of us are here to support you. I invite you to go to Wheel of Wellbeing and examine what is offered to you. Also, my book, Balancing the Wheel, is part of what you will be receiving, an audiobook with practices, exercises, and a lot of applicable information that will be yours once you become a member. We are extending this membership to our friends, to our followers at a very, very, very reduced rate because of what's going on, and we like everyone to be able to take part in this. So please take advantage of this situation and get yourself connected with yourself, understand boundaries, and from there we're together creating more appropriate boundaries, more love and care for all of us. Thank you so much for being with me this morning and looking forward to our few other programs that are coming this week. Have a blessed day.